I'm Joel.
And I'm Mike.
Welcome to another episode of the Fkthry podcast. I think we're on chronological episode 11, which is pretty exciting. We've come a long way.
Yes, again, reorganizing the entire setup a couple more times, but we won't get into it.
Yeah, this is hopefully the final iteration, but I think we've only done the same thing twice. I think we've only ever kept the setup the same twice. One time we recorded the entire thing on a Zoom mobile recorder.
We won't talk about that one.
Yeah.
I still haven't heard that. I don't know if it's even worth it.
It's around. I'll just put it in the folder once I finally get around to collecting.
Yeah,
them all.
we were trying to see if we could still pull off an episode while one of us was like skiing. Were you skiing?
I was at a ski hill. I was at Mount Washington.
Word.
Yeah.
Oh, Mount Washington, man, I missed that place.
Yeah.
So today we're going to talk about some of our experiences DJing, because I'm super curious. We nearly got into it last time. I was going to tell a couple stories because I've got some nightmare stories and some good stories, I think, but I probably don't remember the good ones because it's a lot easier to remember when you nearly train wreck. So what have you got? Tell me some of your craziest memories DJing, but start with, I want to know what your first gig was. What happened there?
I remember pretty clearly. I've been DJing for, oh man, the first gig was so bad. But I've been DJing for probably 3 years, but I'm kind of like tailing off now because I'm more into live production. And when you start to have like more of your own music taste, it's harder and harder to play commercial gigs. So I think I started, it would have been a Halloween gig, and it may have been 2015. It might have been 2016. So it's like I think it was 2016 or maybe even 2017, but Halloween gig. I was hired to play, it's a not exchange student. This is the UBC party calendar, just like some university bar. It's at a pub called Kerner's Pub, which I came to play there a lot in my career. It was kind of like the go-to place. And I was playing like the second stage, and I had no idea what I was doing. I was using a Newmark NS2 or something. It's a Mix Track Pro 2. The thing is entirely molded of plastic. The platters feel like, I don't even know it. They're terrible. It's like the worst thing in the world is 2 channels. The faders are like
plates.
Maybe basically paper plates. The faders are like an inch maybe total.
I remember that thing.
It's really bad.
Oh,
and
man.
It's only USB powered, which is a huge I don't like those because you get the noise floor on them is terrible. Especially when you're turning it up on a system. So that was my first gig, and I played like deep house because I was really into like Oliver Heldens and all that stuff, and people were like, that was kind of before that stuff became more and more mainstream, and it wasn't bad, but I definitely had to play some poppy remixes, and I had no idea what I was doing. I had literally no clue whatsoever. Nothing about reading the crowd. I was just like, I have like 18 tracks, hopefully I can not stop playing. Like your goal at that point is just to keep the music playing as long as possible. And I was just in full panic mode then, right? When you first start, all you can think of is, how do I get another song ready and get going? And then you have like a technical issue and you like barely do it in time. And part of the stress there too is I didn't really understand you could just like stop a song and play another one, and most people just don't care. I was always trying to mix every track as much as possible, which probably put a lot of extra stress on me. And I was mixing like house, deep house kind of. I didn't even know what house was really back then. So,
right, but at least it was all one tempo.
Yes, but I would try to throw in like Jack U and stuff like that because people would request it. And,
man,
yeah, but that probably wasn't the first gig. But yeah, that's how I started. So it was through a friend, and I was playing a gig for just a university crowd, mainly people my age. Yeah. How about you?
Had you really practiced much DJing before you were in front of a crowd?
Yeah, like almost 8 months probably, but very casually. Like I really didn't know anything I was doing, and I don't think practicing in your room translates very well at all. Mechanically, it helps a lot to understand your mixer. It's like practicing the guitar, but as soon as you get on the stage and your hands are shaking, it's much harder to solo. Like there's a whole different experience going on.
Oh yeah.
Plus, a lot of DJing is reading the crowd and reacting, which I didn't even know back then. But mechanically, I wasn't an idiot. Like I knew how to count to 16, count to 8, do the basics.
Right.
I practiced a fair bit in the basement, as the cliche is.
Nice. Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's is kind of different to me here. I like I feel lucky for you because you're like people requested Jack you and stuff, and like for me, I got into DJing because I had to because I found out that that's how you perform electronic music, right? So,
Yeah.
my buddy got an S2, and like a couple of my friends started DJing, and I was like watching them, and I sort of figured out how to do it just by watching them first, and then I was like, I should buy one, and I bought my mixer.
Is that
And
the
then
same one?
I think so.
That's crazy.
Yeah, no,
I've
it's
gone
the
through
same
so
one.
many mixers. That's nuts.
Yeah, and actually, it's funny
Wow.
enough, I almost need to replace it because there's some problems with some of the buttons on it right now. But
Yeah,
the thing is,
yeah.
I built this like unit to hold that version, and now they're on the S3. So I'm like, fuck, like I have to look for like an old S2, or I have to like rebuild it, whatever. I don't know. I'll figure it
Yeah.
out. But anyway, so I bought that mixer, and then it sat on my desk like in front of me, and I'm like, I'll definitely like practice DJing. But the thing is, like every time I was ever watching other people DJ, or like people were just like having fun, it was always with a group of people. It was never with friends. And just like you said, it's like really hard to practice in your room. Like
Yeah.
I knew how to do it, but like I didn't have the patience to like sit there, put on a song, listen to the whole song, and then like do a mix or whatever. And it's like you like DJing in your room by yourself to no one is not even like remotely as fun as it is when other people are around. It's a
Definitely.
completely different thing. So it sat on my desk, and I like pretty much didn't use it at all. I'm like, I know I'm going to need this eventually, but I didn't use it for like a year. And then finally, a friend of mine got me a gig doing weddings. So here I am with my library of like electronic music, and I'm
Yeah.
like, yeah, I definitely can DJ or whatever, not even thinking like what they're going to want at a wedding. So thank God, at least like the same guy who got me the gig, he came over and like gave me a huge list of songs. He's like, these are like songs that are good, you know, from these eras, right? He saved my life. He's like, from the 50s, play these songs. From the 60s, play these songs. And like, I didn't really know any of them, right? Like I had heard a bunch of them because like I'll recognize famous songs, you know, like perfect example, September by Earth, Wind and Fire. I didn't know that that's
Classic.
what that song was. You know what I mean? I knew the song. If we put it on, I'm like, yes, I've heard the song a million times, but I didn't know the names of any of these songs. So I go to start this wedding, and like first of all, it's like kind of easy because it's just playing in the background while people are eating dinner. So I had like just a playlist of a bunch of like, you know, good background like happy wedding love song things. And
Yeah.
I just press play and let it go, and I didn't have to think, right? And then all of a sudden the dance starts, and actually it
Weddings
wasn't
are
even a
hard.
wedding. It wasn't actually even a wedding. I'm realizing now it was actually a corporate business party just before Christmas. So the dinner
Okay.
was even easier because I just had Christmas music on, right? So that was fine. And then the dance starts, and I start playing like I don't even know, like some Avicii song or some sort of club song, and it's like, you know, maybe that's good at like, you know, 11 p.m. at like a downtown club or something
For
like
some
that,
younger
but like
people, yeah.
for some younger people. And that's the problem, is like I'm playing to a crowd of like, you know, 19-year-olds to like 58-year-olds or whatever. I don't know. So maybe there's the 60-year-old. I don't know. It's very specific to say 58, but
Definitely not 57.
no, 100%. There was, yeah, skip that age. So anyway, I'm like playing, and then people are running up to me. They're like, play something with a beat. And I'm like, what do you mean? Like, this is like 4 on the floor. Like, you know, like, I'm like, that's like the biggest insult in the world as a DJ. I'm like, I have no idea. And I'm like, please, for the love of God, request something so I can start playing these songs.
Yeah.
And like, and the guy comes up, he's like, play some Earth, Wind and Fire. And I'm like, okay. What song?
It has the
And
exact
like,
same beat. It has the exact same beat as Avicii too.
100%, totally. So I'm like, I have no idea what these people like, and I'm like
Yeah.
freaking out now because I'm like thinking like I'm gonna do this and like play this and like go into this fucking like Cohen sound and stuff. Like I was like, yeah, right. Are you kidding me, dude?
Some
Like you're
Mr.
not
Brown?
playing glitch. Yeah, just like some like, what are you thinking? Because like to me, like that's like the tame
Yeah.
stuff. Because I'm listening to like crazy underground like shit, right? So it's like
Yeah.
the stuff that normal mainstream EDM lovers like to me is mainstream. But these people, they don't even want pop mainstream. They want like old music. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like the
Sing-alongs
classics.
and-
So I had no idea what I was doing, just literally like guessing. And then eventually people started throwing enough requests at me that I'm like, okay, this song. Oh, okay, remember this. And I started like building a playlist on the fly. But literally I had no idea what I was doing. And
Wow.
and up until then, I had never performed a gig. I maybe had done like 5 or 6 transitions, and
Yeah.
the transitions weren't like a huge problem to me, like going into, you know, doing stuff, because especially like these songs are just they're kind of meant to just be played out, and then kind of play another song. So luckily I didn't die too much on the transitioning and stuff, but my song selection was like way off when I began. So that was crazy.
Well, I think that's everybody's DJ career for sure. Because the thing that I was very lucky that I did pretty early on is I would bring like a book to my sets, and I would write like requests on it, and I would just bring several pens so that people could write requests, and I'd probably play like 4 or 5, and I'd get like 100 requests throughout the night, and I would take those home and listen to every single one, and I ended up building a huge library from other people's requests because I didn't know, everybody's like musical upbringing, they only hear so many songs, right? So for me, it was like as soon as I started taking other people's requests, it helped a lot in building that library. I hadn't heard September before I started DJing, and I play that shit every night whenever I'm playing. I play like Rasputin by Boney M. That being fair, I haven't heard that one before, but
yeah, man. And you find out what songs work, and that was the most interesting thing to me. And when that's a whole nother thing. Speaking of when, I remember when I first got a gig at a club, I would go, to see my friends DJ and stuff like that. And I know the songs that they played. I'm like, these songs go off or whatever. And I remember, what's that? Oh, Get Low by Dylan Francis. So I'm like, I'm like, that song works in a club. Yeah, but it works, right? And so this is the thing is like, I go to play a set and it's like 10:30 p.m. and I start playing, I mix into Get Low. And like, there's only like 12 people in the club. And like the manager looks at me and he's like, what are you doing? Like, they're going to have to play that song later, like, you dingus. Like, these are not songs. And they had to come and talk to me. They're like, don't do this. And then also another thing is that I had, like, secret transitions that I would do at weddings, like things I'd always do this song into this song or whatever. And I started getting into this rhythm. And when you're doing weddings, it's a new crowd every time. You're never playing to the same group of people. So it's like they're not going to know what you played for another wedding. But when I'm at the club, I'm like there every week or whatever. And so it's like if I'm doing the same transitions every time, they notice. And I kept like doing like this one, and the manager's like, maybe next time you play, Backstreet Boys, you don't go into Spice Girls. And I'm like, oh man. And it's like so much more difficult for me because I'm like, I can't fake all these things that I was faking before. And like I had to like really learn how to like figure out what people liked. And that was a big learning curve for sure.
They didn't want you to do like preset transitions and stuff? Because I had like tons. I built up plenty, and like, I'd play almost the same set, very close to the same set every night, because if I didn't, people would get mad. Like it's the same songs every night. I have probably 90 songs that I play in 3 hours. Right. And it ended up being very similar. I would pull in a couple requests here or there, but I mean, the people that worked there were like, oh my God, it's the same thing. I'm like, yeah, but it kills. But at the same time, I feel the same, but I really can't deviate from it that much because these are the songs that I need to play for this crowd, unfortunately.
Yeah. No, I don't think it was so much of like it was ruining the club or anything by me doing those transitions, but the manager, everyone's a DJ, so he's like noticing, so he's like giving me advice and stuff. And I have no problem with that. I'm sure the crowd wasn't noticing too much, especially considering they'd be like drunk off their asses most of the time anyway. So
that's a big thing too. You'll notice that when the crowd gets drunk. So like, I guess with clubs, it's a bit less, but so I mainly played at the student pub essentially that would get turned into like a club. I think we would max out at like 500 people on a good night. So it's a decent sized club.
Yeah, that's pretty big.
But what was I going to say? There's a definite shift when people actually start getting drunk, and that's when you realize, okay, I can be a little bit, I can mess with the transitions a little bit more. As long as I just play the song they want to hear, it doesn't matter how that transition went.
100%. And speaking of that, that's kind of what I was circling around to, is that I learned this from like the wedding stuff as well as from the club stuff, is that when you're DJing, it doesn't like really matter so much like how good the song is or how much you like the song, but it's all has to do with like how many people in the room know that song.
Exactly, yeah. And if it's people can sing along to it as well.
100%, because if everybody knows,
it's huge.
Yeah. It's massive, because like when you play a song that's like good, like a cool new song, like I want to do this, like you're really hoping that you think the same things are good that your audience thinks is good. And if they're coming to see you perform, that's like a different story. But if you're catering to like a groove or like a vibe for a night, it's like it's really important to make people feel like they're together. And like when you play a song that everybody knows, it instantly can synchronize two things, or it can synchronize one thing about two different people that gives them something to connect over that they didn't have prior to that. So in a room full of drunk people who don't know each other, if you play a song that both of them know the lyrics to, and they look over and see both of each other singing along to the song, it like instantly builds a connection that people can grab onto, and it really helps kind of like make the night more about everybody and less about like yourself. And that's like
Definitely
a big thing that I learned.
Well, and I feel like even that translates to huge artists when they do their sets, because when you go to see somebody like Deadmau5 or whatnot, he's going to play random stuff in the middle of the set and kind of try to spice it up a little bit, but he almost always ends with strobe, which does exactly what you're saying. That's what everybody knows that from him, or he has some mix up of that version, but he almost always ends his set. Every time I've seen him, he's played that as his last song, and everybody knows. Like, it basically takes all 10,000 people in that stadium and they immediately click and are on the same page, which is a really cool moment to do. I mean, and it's similar, but then for a smaller space, it's like just some drunk people, they need a song to sing along to. So
yeah, 100%. And so that's why, like, I think I ended every single wedding I ever did with "Don't Stop Believin'," and it's like, it's fine, yeah, it seems like a cliche, but it never failed. There was never a single time that I played that song and people were like, oh man, like, never. You get the odd person in the crowd who's like, oh, but then they're only sour about it for 5 seconds, and then they see every single person in the room singing, and everyone's having fun, and it's like, just have fun, enjoy it, right? So I learned to love a lot of songs that I thought I didn't like for different reasons.
Well, you see the power that it has in a live setup. Yeah, it's funny because I started off definitely very electronic. Like, I came from I right at the beginning of my career of DJing, I was into that kind of Oliver Heldens. It's not really deep house, it's just kind of like FM pluck house. There's a lot of stuff like that. I really like it's the same with Jaws, like that whole, it's like the early bass house. I did a lot of bass house in that, and then got into like kind of the EDM stuff that was all the rage back then, like some virtual ride and stuff, like all the stuff that I don't not like now, but I feel like I've kind of grown out of. And it's funny because like as I kind of progressed through it, I think the first year I fought it really hard and really was like trying to play the stuff that I liked, or my entire set would be around, okay, I'm going to play a track that they know, and then I'm going to mix that into a cool track that I like. And it would immediately lose the energy, or it would immediately kind of cause problems there. And then I realized like the same thing you're saying, there's certain songs. And I think one point, like obviously Mr. Brightside's a good one for the end of the night, but one that I always played was, is it Can't Stop Me Now by the Queen?
Can't
or Don't Stop Me Now,
or Don't Stop. Yeah,
I think it's Don't Stop Me Now. Yeah,
don't
that's
stop
like
me
my
now.
that's like my double encore song, because it just starts from nothing and then builds up to like this crazy crescendo and then comes back down and then stops and then ends with like a sing along out. And it's that's one of my favorite ones to play near the end of the night.
Yeah,
and that's
100%.
like, you would never think as a DJ that that's something you would play mixing into things, and you don't mix it in anything. It just kind of plays by itself.
Yeah, you just start it.
Yeah,
and that man, like there's so many tricks you learn to DJing as well, like when it's not time to mix something, or when to like hard cut into a completely different tempo, things that like when you're coming up as DJing, you're like that's something that you can't do, and then all of a sudden you do like where you just like spin back a song and then start another song at like a completely different tempo, and it's just like those sort of like tricks and things that like like add change to the night. Like it's really cool learning all those techniques and figuring out like what you can really do with DJing, and you can only learn it by playing in front of people. That's for sure.
Yeah, well, I think getting back to me talking that first night where I was just simply trying to keep the music going. I don't know when you were talking that first wedding one, if you were feeling the same way, you're just simply trying to stay at that level. I think 100%. It probably took, you only play maybe 3 or 4 gigs, a month tops. That's kind of what my cadence was. There were some weeks where I played like 3 in a week, but that was a bit too much for me. But I found it took me probably 6 to 8 months to get to the point where I was able to I'd have kind of the pulse of the dance floor somewhat, and I wasn't stressing out about the transitions. And that's a really cool transition when you go from, you're no longer just panicking trying to get tracks playing and just panicking over the transitions, and then you make a bad transition and it sticks with you for like 5 minutes, like you're just able to push past it.
100%.
And then you're really thinking about the arc, and it's like you're trying to it's like, okay, well, I'm going to play this song and a bunch of people are going to go walk away and get drinks, but that's on purpose because I just built up, I played the peak song for the first 20-30 minutes, and now we're going to slow it down, let people go get drinks. And people are going to be like, oh, it's going to be low energy for a bit, but that you actually need that a little bit. And whether that's via tempo, you're dropping down to like something in the 90s, and it's kind of a more of a groove, slower stuff, and a bit more casual, and then you bring it back up again. So that's where, when you start to think like that, that's where I was like, wow, this is kind of a bit of an art form. And I feel like that's also kind of how it connects to something like comedy, in that it's like the pacing of like these, in comedy it's bits, but it's still the whole overarching thing. It's about the pacing and kind of the spacing of things in the crowd and kind of dealing with the story.
Yeah, and it's like foreplay is important. You know what I mean? You can't just have bangers the entire night. It doesn't work.
Exactly.
You know,
100%.
You gotta have lead up. You gotta have some good lead up. You gotta tickle them a little bit.
So that you started with that. You started with the wedding gig, but then you also DJ'd at that club for a while.
Yeah.
Was there a specific gig that was do you want to talk about a gig that like went very poorly, or do you have any crazy stories there?
I have some. The club was never a bad time.
Yeah.
I don't think I ever had any problems at the club, but the wedding, man, oh man. And so like just to touch on like when Joel says sometimes I had 3 a week and I go, woof, it's because we're not talking about normal DJ gigs where you show up with your USB stick, have fun, and then peace out. All right.
Yeah.
We are carrying around a PA system that we are responsible for. We have to set it up before the gig starts. And then after it's done, we have to tear it all down, pack it into our cars, and then go somewhere and probably unpack it again. And this is at like 2 a.m. already. So
and for me, you're renting it from Long and McQuaid, so you have to drive it back to the place in the morning.
Even worse. That's a nightmare. Yeah, so it's crazy, and we got to set up lights and stuff too. Things you don't even think about. You know what I mean? Like that shit doesn't just show up. All right, like people have to set things up.
Fog
okay, your night is not that easy. Fog machine never. Oh, that brings it. Oh my god, that brings.
I've got
great
stories too, so keep going. Yeah.
Okay. So let me go first. So aside from the fact that like my wedding gigs, 90% of the time they were always in Victoria. So imagine this, like
you're driving all the way down.
Yeah, so I'm coming from Nanaimo, so that's an hour and a half already. So what happens is they would get a package, and they would always get upselled that it was only like an extra $50 or something. I don't know. It was probably more for them. We got an extra $50 for this, but it was a 6-hour gig, which usually went from like 5:30 to 11:30, or it was like 6:30 to 12:30 or something. That was the standard package, right? But then they could pay a little bit extra to get us to do music for the ceremony. Right? So that means that we have to like show up for the bride to walk down the aisle and play music for all the people. Oh man, I'm just getting horror stories coming to mind.
Don't fuck that up.
Oh man. Okay. So oh no, I'm remembering nightmares. Okay.
I've done one of those, by the way. Yeah.
So the gig itself, I have to get there, be set up and ready to play music by noon, okay? That means that I have to leave my house by at least 10 if I want to account for traffic. So I'm leaving my house at 10 in the morning with all this shit. I have to show up to the gig, set up my gear, play a bunch of songs, then tear it all down, drive to the what do you call it? The reception. Yeah, drive to the reception hall, set it all up again, and then play music for 6.5 hours. But the gig always ended up being like, because I would be leaving my house at 10 a.m. and getting home at like 2 in the morning, like I don't even want to do the math on that. And here's the worst part. I was getting $150 a gig.
That's, oh my God, dude. And you're bringing your own DJ gear too. You're using their audio gear though, right?
Yeah, using their audio gear. So I didn't have to rent it, but I'm getting $150 for a 6-hour gig. It's $25 an hour. It is
plus
like
driving like all
but
day.
It's not even close. It's not even close to the right amount. No. And then we got an extra $50 for the ceremony. So that was a nightmare on itself. But then I've got some pretty bad horror stories. One time I didn't get in a car accident. I had to go past a car accident, and I ended up showing up like I just completely missed the ceremony. Like imagine walking into a ceremony or like walking in to set up your shit, and you're like 2.5 hours late, and everyone's just staring at you like, oh man, that was the worst. And then on the drive home from that one, on the drive home from that one, I ended up getting a fat speeding ticket, which was like cost me way more than the amount that I got paid. Coming home from Souk at like 1 in the morning. Oh man, no, it wasn't even Souk. It was Schwartz Bay.
I can't imagine driving home.
Nightmare.
Like, most of the ones I did, I would get pretty drunk at mine. I mean, I definitely tried to like tone it down later on, but like when you're at a bar and they give you a ton of drink tickets, it's like, well. I was just bus from home, and so a lot of the audio gear I would leave overnight at the club, at the place, or we'd use their audio gear and set it up, which is really handy. We still have to set it up every time, but not having to drive home was huge in a lot of the cases. I can't imagine. Like that's like when we went to Deadmau5 that one time, and we're like, well, we don't want to pay for hotels, so we're gonna drive all the way back from Seattle,
like
at like 1 in the morning. Yeah,
so ridiculous.
Yeah.
But yeah, so another thing about the ceremonies, one time this lady wanted, oh my God, this lady wanted me to play the song, I Got You, Babe. You know the Sonny and Cher one, too. Din, 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 din,
Yeah.
I got you, babe, right? So there's a UB40 version of that. And it's like I don't know, like a cover or like a whatever, whatever you call it when like there's a famous person who really does like redo a song.
One?
So no, but here's the thing is I only have 2 versions of this song on my computer. They're from the hard drive that I was given from the company, and it's the Sonny and Cher version, and then the UB40 or whatever. And so I go to play the song, and I've never listened to either of them. And it's like time for the bride to walk down the aisle, and I press play, and all I hear all of a sudden is just no, it wasn't even that. No, what the hell was that song? It's like a no. I will remember it. I think it was that. It's like a Hootie and the Blowfish song. What the hell is the name of that song? I gotta remember right now. I can't even think about it. It's every time I look at you, I go blind. Every time I look at you, I go blind. Do you know that song?
I do, in the deep recesses of my
the
mind.
bass line is
Yeah, I know that song.
Yeah. So that starts playing, and in my mind, I'm like, this is fine. This is the song. I've never listened to the other version, and it's like every time I look at you, and I'm listening to the lyrics going, I'm like, yeah, sure, that sounds like a walk down the aisle song. And all of a sudden, the wedding manager starts booking it from somewhere. She jumps out of the bushes and over a trampoline and through some sprinklers, and she fucking throws a dog out of the way and just fucking all this shit storming over it. I'm like,
yeah.
She's like, this isn't the right song. I'm like, look at it, and it's tagged. It's written right there, with the right artist and the right title and the right everything, and it's playing. And I'm like, what do you want from me? It's the only version. I don't have Wi-Fi. I can't go and download it right now. What the fuck am I supposed to do? I have no idea. Everyone's waiting. They're sitting there waiting for this bride to walk down. There's a person yelling at me, and now I'm having an argument, and everyone's just sitting there what's happening? And so me in my stupid terrible immature mind, I'm I don't know what the fuck to do in this situation. And I'm like, okay, I'm just gonna play the normal Sonny and Cher version. It's as best as I can do. I hope she forgives me. And I fucking slam it over, and instead of doing it nonchalantly, I was and did a spin back, and it's doom 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 doom, and I'm
11
sorry
p.m.
guys. No, it's not even. It's it's noon.
No,
it's
I'm
noon,
the transition was a midnight type transition.
Oh yeah. No.
Slam in the next drop.
Fucking pull out an air horn. Yo guys, what's good? Fucking blast the CO2 cannons.
Oh,
just so yeah, no, it was really, really bad. Super embarrassing. I'm I don't know what I oh my God. Yeah. And so afterwards she comes up and I'm I am so sorry. She's it's okay. Only ruined my most magical day, Yeah. And it's you had one job. So anyway, night goes on, and it was an interesting night. Apparently the client ended up complaining a bunch, not about me specifically. It was actually really weird. I was packing up for the end of the night, and she's like, oh, here, let me give you a tip. And she gave me the biggest tip I ever had from a gig, which was not that much, and I don't really want to disclose it, but it was enough that it was I was really surprised. I'm really, you're gonna give me a tip?
I've never been tipped.
Yeah.
I've never been tipped as a DJ, so that's
You've
pretty
never
cool.
Been tipped? Man, rough.
I ran most of my own shows though, so
yeah, fair.
Yeah, I could tip myself, but
you tip yourself. Just open up a tip jar, put a little starter 5 in there. You're yeah.
Oh yeah.
Walk out. You're let me count it. The 1 5 just floats out.
But
yeah, no, it's chill.
But yeah, dude, I've only ever done one wedding gig, and I didn't actually do the after party. I just did the daytime, set up all the audio, and make sure it worked. And they were like, "Here's the song. Just play the song." I'm like, "You're gonna find it on your phone." On your Spotify, you're going to give me the phone code. I'm going to plug that phone into the aux cable, and I'm just going to hit play it. So there's no mistake. And if there's a mistake, it's your fault. Yeah. And there was nothing else. It was just one speaker and an aux cable because I didn't want anything to break. And that wasn't something that I'd done before. So yeah, that was. Yeah.
Another one coming back to the, I was going to say fire extinguisher, the fog machine.
Yeah.
So there was a one where I had to do the first dance. This is all the same gig, but I've never had this before, but the couple had actually prepared a very specific dance routine for this song, and I go to play it, and I had 2 versions of the song, and I should have asked them which one it was that they wanted, but I grabbed the radio edit, and it wasn't. It was the full version. So I go to play it and it starts and they start doing their dance and they get like 8 bars into it and then all of a sudden like the song transitions into the next section early, right? So all of a sudden they stop and the groom is like,
no.
he's like, hold on 1 second, and like, you know, he's like an actor about it and he turns around and he like runs over to me, he's like, this is not the right song. I'm like, fuck, like I had what 50% chance, like why would it not be the radio version? Who do I think is actually sitting at home listening to full length versions of songs these days? I don't know.
No.
So anyway, I had to restart that, but this was funny because this guy was like, yeah, like I want you to play club shit, we're gonna make it all cool and stuff, like get a fog machine, bring a fog machine. And I'm like, sweet. And he's like, yeah, let's get it all, like let's do it, you know, we're gonna go hard tonight. And I'm like, sweet, I get to play for these, like a bunch of these crazy people or whatever. So the night's like rolling on and then all of a sudden we get to the dance. He's like, yeah, bring out the fog, yeah, do it. And I'm like, fuck yeah, I got the fog machine. Yeah, and I'm like, here we go, and I like press the remote button, and he's like looking at me like, yeah, and I'm like looking at him like, yeah, we're gonna do this, and like all of a sudden I see the hotel staff just fucking running over, jumping over a fence, like jumps over a trampoline, through a water sprinkler, throws a top.
Oh, this sounds familiar.
Just booking it.
There was a dog out of the way.
I'm like, what? Yeah, I don't know why there was a dog on the dance floor, but anyway, so she's running over to me at full speed. She's like, no, and I'm like, what's the matter? And all of a sudden, fire alarm's just like. And just starts going, and like the sprinklers didn't go. No,
man.
Luckily the sprinklers did not. But the fire alarm starts going, and like me and the groom both look at each other. We're like, "You did not clear this, did you?" And he's
That's like $2,000. That's like $2,000.
Like, oh, did they? Oh, they probably totally got charged for it.
You get charged if you're a business. So it's funny you have that story. I have the exact same story. So I was running. A year after I was doing the UBC gigs, I took over running the exchange student club ones at UBC, and that was still a Kerner. So I basically did the sound, the tech, hired the whole crew, and then what was nice, I got to manage all the drink tickets, which is like the currency when you're running a show. You just handed all the drink tickets to everybody that's doing work. It was all volunteers and student only, but yeah, so we brought the fog machine, and my predecessor had used it all the time, and it was no problem. And I use it sometimes, but not always. And we did it for this one big one. We're like, okay, we're going to get the fog machine. And again, the same thing happened. The fire alarm went off. And I was like, oh my God, I can't believe I did this happen. And we had to evacuate everybody. And there's like 450 people in this, and there's one entrance. So everybody has to go through the entrance, and it's raining. Everybody goes outside.
No.
And it didn't ruin the night entirely, but like it definitely did a big damper on it. And then so the crazy thing is, a year later, so we do themes. We would do one gig. I think we do like 8 or 9 per semester. And so every semester we do the same set of themes to some degree. And so this was the final one of this semester. So we did the next year, or one semester later, that same final gig where everybody wears white t-shirts and you get to like write on it because everybody flies home after that.
Yeah.
I brought the fog machine again, and I cleared it with the lady, and said, yeah, we've found the fire detector and we've closed the doors so that the smoke won't go to it, which is probably questionable. But it was basically, we ventilated it in a way that the smoke
doesn't seem like a real good solution.
Well, I don't know. It was like, she's like, it's fine. We don't need to worry about it. You can run it there and the smoke won't get back to there. And like, it won't get to where because it's in the kitchen where it's supposed to be, right?
Yeah, that makes sense.
And it goes off again.
No.
But this time it wasn't the fog machine. 2 students lit a fire in the men's bathroom. And I didn't even realize this, but I actually had to go to the bathroom, and the entire bathroom was full of fire
like the retardant, like the
yeah, and it was like that for years. I bet you I could go there now, and if you go into the men's bathroom, like the roof is just covered in it, and nobody's ever cleaned it properly.
Oh my God, that's so funny.
Exchange students party pretty hard, especially because like they have a bunch of money, and they don't have to, like, all their classes are pass fail, so they just don't care. Like they don't have to do well; they just have to pass them. Yeah.
I didn't even think about that.
Yeah. That's crazy. Like, we've had some pretty good. Somebody got stabbed once, but that was because somebody that was not exchanged came in, because we got a bit of a following in the later years, or in the late, like a year after, and ours is just open to everybody. But yeah, it's pretty weird, but yeah.
So any tech issues on a gig?
Yeah, one time I bought the new thing that I have behind me, which is actually, no, it wasn't. I had a DJ SX2, which is a Serato. So I used to use Serato, and I bought it brand new and literally lost the power supply the first gig I did, which cost $100. Thanks, Pioneer, for a power supply. And I'm not about to buy a non-real one because I don't want it to fry like the $2,000 mixer. Right? It's like a quad channel, like top of the line thing or whatever. ended up selling it and replacing for what I have now. But that time, literally somebody I knew that was also a DJ had the exact same mixer as me and had just bought it. So I literally called and was like, I'm on my way to your house. I hope you don't have a gig because I need your power supply because or else I'm screwed.
Oh my God.
And I gave him I bought him a case of beer and gave him $20, used it for the night and then gave it back to him. And then I went and I bought one I had one ordered into Tom Lee or whatever, which sucked because that was the price of I wasn't getting paid very much back then either.
Yeah. Yeah. When your gig costs you the same amount as you got paid. Yeah. That's sucks. No good.
But funny gig, probably my worst gig that I've ever done. I wouldn't say that I've ever train wrecked any gigs. I've been pretty lucky in that. I probably played the wrong music a lot, but I've never really had too many issues where building a dance floor has been too much of an issue. Once I've got past the first 8 months or so of kind of figuring it out, it was pretty smooth sailing from that point on. But the one that was the worst is I took a St. Patrick's Day gig. Oh my God. I literally took a St. Patrick's Day gig that was I don't know if those kind of parties, they start at noon. And they go all the way until forever. Midnight. So it was literally a 12-hour gig. And I was told by the person that I wouldn't have to play it all and I could play whatever music I wanted. Uh-huh. And pretty quickly.
Let me guess, that didn't happen.
That did not happen at all. And I don't have any St. Patrick's themed music. So I just have whatever music I don't even know what St. Patrick's, it's I guess it's Scottish music or
Irish, bro.
Oh shit. Okay. Well, I don't even know.
It's chill. Scottish is basically similar.
Yeah. Well, I don't know why I thought it was Scottish. Anyways, I was thinking kilts for some reason.
St. Haggis Day.
Yeah.
Kilt lifters.
Yeah. Too bad I'm too lazy to cut this out. So it's going to be in the episode.
It's fine.
Yeah. So anyways, it was St. Patrick's Day. And I started off by just playing a mix that went just off my phone or whatever. And then it just went downhill so fast. And it was a 35-minute mix or 40 minutes. And then I just set it to loop. And so every 30 minutes, I just go back and keep looping it. And then somebody complained that the music was just looping. And it was really bad and low quality.
You got caught, bro.
Well, but the thing is, the guy told me it was okay to loop it. He was like, no, it's fine. We didn't tell you to play this long, so just throw something on. And I was like, okay. And then they started complaining about it. And then so I literally had my phone and my computer, and I was running them not DJ mode, just sending the audio out to the two inputs. And I was just cross-fading between two different YouTube videos that I would just randomly choose. And some of them are so...
That's what you played?
Well, because I had to play 12 hours, so that was for the first 3 hours. And
3 hours into this?
Well, it was an hour and a half, probably an hour, 2 hours. And then what happened is some guy from Newfoundland is actually insane. He came up to the stage and he's like, your music is so shit. What the fuck are you doing? I would play a song and it would be this really weird remix of an Irish song.
Oh my God.
And anyway, so... But the thing is, everybody's just getting wasted, so it really didn't matter at all. But it was just background music at this point. Nobody was dancing, and I was supposed to be DJing later on at the night when the sun went down. But this guy from Newfoundland comes up, and he's like, this is terrible. And I was like, well, I wasn't even told that I'd have to do this. I was just gonna throw on random background music. And then he's like, well, I know all this music, and I was like, here's the phone, go nuts. And he just DJ'd the next 3 hours, and it was all fire. And he basically saved me. And then I switched on and played other music. But, oh, my God, dude. That
sounds terrible.
That was a real panic moment. That's when I started to realize that even if, the person who's booking you for the gig says you don't need this kind of music, you should still have a backup because...
Definitely prepare.
Even a mix or two, just having a good YouTube video that's okay, this is, an hour and a half that I can just throw on versus, panicking and just choosing the first thing that shows up that's really bad. Yeah, it's a big difference.
Yeah. Without being able to cue it or even hear what you're about to play. And you're like, I'm so sorry, guys. This is not what I even thought it was.
So that was probably my worst gig ever, I think. Yeah.
Wow. That sounds like a nightmare.
Yeah. It was... Crazy. I don't really like themed events that much. They're kind of Other than Halloween.
Well, yeah,
Halloween's
man.
fun.
I've had some weird experiences with themed events too, like an Oktoberfest one. Like they wanted me to download a bunch of Oktoberfest music, but it's
Same
like
thing.
it all is not. It's not great. You know, it's not good music. You think
Yeah.
this is gonna be fun, and people are like, "What are we listening to?"
Yeah.
Yeah. I even had one lady come and try and like sing a song or whatever, and I was like, "Is this okay?" It was like a Christmas party or whatever, and they're like, "Sure, just let her sing." And I'm like, "Okay." And that's when I learned like, don't ever give any of your audience the microphone. Just don't do it. It's not a
No.
good time. And she was like some 70-year-old lady who was like trying to get attention the entire night, and she's like, "Hoolie the hoolie," and I'm like, "What are you singing?" Like it was literally like some I don't know, some like Scottish march or something like that. Like I don't know
Irish
what it
march?
was, but it was probably Irish, yeah. But it was crazy, man. So like, yeah, I've had some pretty crazy things happen.
Yeah.
As far as crazy
Technical
things
issues?
that I've seen, like
about-
technical
yeah.
issues. I've had one time we showed up and we were missing like a very important like plug for our power supply, and I can't remember like. Yeah, that's what it was, because we were DJing on like an island somewhere. Is it Salt Spring Island? I think it might be Salt Spring.
Well, that's tough.
Yeah, I don't remember exactly what island it was, but anyway, we had to roll over like our huge like school event DJ rig, which was like massive bass bins, like 4 18-inch cones, and like
How many
2
watts?
of those.
Like 4 or 5.
It was a lot. Yeah, easily.
Wow.
It was quite large, and so we had to roll in 2 huge amps, and like we had this like my boss had developed this system that was essentially like a giant like audio like bin of cables and stuff, and if you open it up, all you see is like cables, and it's like you have no idea what's going on. But if you know how to work it, you basically pull each cord out one at a time, and it's labeled by color, and you plug it into the same thing, and then it goes into the box and gets routed to the proper places.
It's like
So
the
it's
real
essentially
life.
just like a routing.
It's like the real life
What?
routing of one of your Ableton sessions. Like,
Yes,
yeah.
exactly, 100%. That's what it was, exactly.
Yeah.
So we had like screens and speakers, and it was like tops and lows, and like 3 projectors, and like, you know, all the stuff. It was huge lighting racks like with
Like pretty
scaffolding
serious.
and stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was serious. And so anyway, we get to the gig, and in order to get our power supply, we're coming from a 220 volt thing, and sometimes it's a dryer plug and sometimes it's a washer plug. And we only had the washer plug, but it was a dryer plug that we needed. And so there was an extra dryer plug, but it wasn't wired. So literally like before the gig, the guy that I was DJing with, he's like, "You finished setting everything up," and he's like, he's like over there like stripping power
Trying
supplies
to find some Moretz
and
so
like,
you can, like link it.
rewiring some stuff. Yeah, no, actually, funny enough, I'm only realizing now that this is incorrect. That was me who had to do that. I had to rewire a washer one time, and I did it literally with just electrical tape. But that wasn't so bad because those are designed to be hardwired in. He was trying to rewire the actual power supply to our mixer that controlled the entire show. And
my
that was
God.
just like a little rinky-dink, like one of those things. It's like the tiny little, like an old laptop power supply where you plug it in and then it's got a capacitor, and it was like stripped. So he literally like cut it like on both things, and then was trying to rewire these tiny little wires, and it was like literally moments before we were supposed to start playing that he actually got it working. And I was like, I can't, like I cannot believe that you managed to do that. Another
That's
scenario
another level
with
of stress.
wiring.
Oh.
Oh yeah, it was crazy.
Everything
'cause we
relies on
couldn't-
that if that's the mixer.
100%. Everything. We could have power to everything else, but we couldn't get any signal to any of the things that was important without it.
Yeah.
So then another one, I was playing. It wasn't prom. It was dry grad in Nanaimo, and this was really funny because there's 2 DJs that are hired to play this gig, and there's like a main room which is like with a bigger system, and then like a side room which is just like literally 2 top speakers set up on a table, like, and it's like looks super terrible, like it's not a good DJ setup. But I've played this gig a couple times, and usually we roll in there with the full setup that I was just explaining with the bass bins and everything. But instead they didn't pay us like the full amount this time, so we just showed up with like smaller speakers that have a little bit of sub to them but nothing big, right?
Yeah.
I set them up, and I'm thinking I'm going to be playing in the main room, which is like normal, and that means I'm just going to basically be playing like requests and top 40 stuff and like just like, you know, get through the night bullshit. And then the kids roll up who were supposed to be playing in the side room, and they're like, "Oh, we were told that we're getting the main room." And I can see these kids, right? I'm like, they're like, this is their big gig, you know? They're like, "Oh, someone in the audience is going to find them or something, you know, even though the only people allowed in the building are the kids and like the parents who are supervising, right? So it's not like you're going to get scouted out by a label or something, but this is what's going on in their mind. I can see it, and they're just like
an A&R person at a kid's dry grad.
Yeah, exactly, right? So that's the thing, is like they think that this gig is so big, right? And I remember myself in those shoes, like when I was like, oh wow, I get to play the main room at like dry grad, like everyone's going to know me. And like they're like, we had a set prepared and everything, and I'm just imagining their faces when they saw the place that they were supposed to be playing, and I'm like, you know what, like, you guys can have the main room. It's totally fine. And really, in my head, all I'm thinking is like, they're fucked, because they think that they're going to be playing like Avicii and like, you know, like Prague House and stuff. That's what they had planned, right? And I'm like, like, I'm going to let you in on a secret. This is not going to be as easy as you think. Like, you better have requests ready. You better be able to play requests, or you're going to not have a fun time. You know, and they're like, yeah, we got this, or whatever. And I'm like, it'll be a good learning lesson for them. But onto the technical thing, I plugged in the speakers and they started playing music, and I'm like, one of these speakers is out of phase. So literally, I'm like, what in the flying fuck? Because it sounded so wrong. I'm like, this is not right. So I literally had to pull the speak-on wire out, take the end off, rewire the end into the speak-on wire, and then get it going. And that was like literally like moments before their gig started. And that was like fucking nightmare, because I literally had like the most minimal of tools. Yeah, literally. It's not that hard.
You just did a speak-on wire wrong? Like somebody just done it, had a bad cable?
Well, because my boss makes all his cables, so someone who was wiring it just they had them out of phase, and I'm like, oh my god, I only have like a screwdriver that'll fit in the speak-on thing, so I had to unplug it, pull the wires out, switch them around, and that was stressful. But back to the rest of the gig, this was great, because now that I knew it was just me playing on the table in the back, I was like, I'll spend the extra effort. I'm going to go get the sub that I have at my house. I went back home, grabbed the sub, and then
probably
went there
was
and
going into their stage, though.
What's that?
No,
they were like,
they had lots.
They were like way far away from each other, like 10 minutes walking distance in a different building. Yeah, because they had the entire all of the Beban Park rented out, all the way from the very beginning all the way to the very end. So anyway, I'm like, this is great, because I'm playing in the back room, which is in like a warehouse where all the like the blow up shit is, the laser tag and all the crazy shit with like the punching bag that people are punching to get scores on and stuff. All the cool kids. So I literally like roll in there. Yeah, exactly. So I roll in there with the sub, and I just played straight electro shit all night. I was just playing random whatever the fuck I wanted, and people were like, whatever, like, fuck yeah. They come in, they're like, sweet, this is cool. And like, I got the cool underground side stage, so I was having so much fun all night. And I go back to check on the kids. I like, you know, just to see what's going on, and they're like sweating. They're like, do you have anything by Kanye? I don't have anything by Kanye. What are we gonna do? Like, freaking out. And I'm just like,
do you have any Beyonce?
No, I'm like, right. I saw that coming. I was like, yeah, how's it going, guys? They're like, oh, and then here's the worst part. The speakers were drawing so much power that when they turned it up to a volume that was necessary to accompany the right amount of people, it would blow the switch, the fuse in the system, and they would have to power off and power it back on. So the entire night, I feel so bad, because they're like, we want the main room. I'm like, here you go. And it ended up being like the worst gig ever for them.
The biggest dodge.
Yeah, 100%. I actually got to have fun that night. Yeah. And then I remember at the end of the night, because it starts getting packed up like in succession to kind of push everyone to that room at the end of the night where they do all the announcements and the prizes and stuff. And then I was like giving them like, you know, advice. I'm like, okay, play oh my God. Play Yeah by Usher. You know, I'm like, play this. I'm just like, you know, try this next. And, you know, I'm like, did you try playing Hot in Here by Nelly yet? They're like, oh no, I didn't think about it. So I'm just like giving them all my club songs, and then all of a sudden the night just starts popping, right? And everybody's like, yeah. And I'm just like, yeah, just play this. Play that. And they're like, wow, man, like you were right. Like we have a lot to figure out, right? And I'm like, you know, you were just at the wrong gig. You know what I mean? I'm like, you thought it was a gig for you, and you didn't know that it was a gig for them. And that's the huge difference.
It's funny you say that, because that's where, you know, as I was playing like weekly, I found that I don't not like the regular DJ gigs where you play for other people. It's really rewarding when you can do, you know, have a bunch of people have a really good time and just play those songs. Where I had a problem with it was when I was doing it every single week, and it was kind of messing up my sleep schedule. Plus I felt so repetitive. It's like that set I just did is fresh in my memory. It's like time to do it all over again kind of thing. But what I ended up doing is, so since I was running the gig, I also started booking other people to headline instead of me. And then I would open, almost like you were playing that back room, and I just play whatever the hell I wanted. And the manager's like, wow, Joel, you have like good music taste. I'm like, well, just because I can play whatever I want now. And I just play like a chill house set, and like, while people are kind of getting drunk and whatnot, and kind of set a vibe.
Nice.
Which I ended up liking way more. And that was kind of my transition out of DJing. I realized like less and less that I wanted to be doing kind of I just only have so much time to make music, right? You know, in the week.
Yeah.
So it's like, well, if I'm spending a week or, doing a 3-hour set every week, it takes a lot of energy. And sometimes it would be, you know, a specialized set. Funny story. There's something called the Latin night, which is one of the themes we did. And because there's this exchange student club, and we would have a lot of Brazilian and Mexican and just pretty much lots of just kind of
exchange students,
lots of Latin exchange students. So we would be,
right.
We did a night just for them, and we would have like a Latin instructor class. There was like a dance club, and they would do like tango lessons. I think it's tango, right? But yeah,
Samba.
it's like they would do like they would do dance lessons at the beginning of the night, and then it would turn into like a club night. And the first one, they were like, "Hey, Joel, can you do it? We think you could. You know, you're a good DJ. You can do it." And I was like, "Well, it's 3 hours long, and I don't have any Mexican music or Brazilian any music at all." And they were like, "Okay, well, it's fine. We'll build you a playlist if you play it."
Okay.
Which is doable, but I would not recommend doing this as a DJ. Ended up getting like about 90 reggaeton songs, like reggaeton and some other stuff. And technically speaking, it wasn't really that hard for me to DJ it because they all have very similar beats. And there's only really two tempos. It's only really like 80 to 95. Yeah. Sometimes it goes to 100. And then there's the stuff that's not double time, but it's like it's not the rhythm, but like, I can't think of the song right now, but there's some like 120 to 120 or 130 stuff, which is good because then you kind of have this earlier night stuff and the late night stuff.
Yeah, I know the stuff you're talking about.
So I was able to kind of mix that no problem. But where the issue started to come up was when the Brazilians would come to me and say, "Hey, you've been playing only Mexican reggaeton. I want Brazilian reggaeton."
Yes.
And I was like, I don't know the difference. I was like, can you just request a song? Because I don't know. And then they got really mad because I was like, I don't know what I'm doing. The thing is, we were going to hire somebody who was an expert at it, but they were going to charge like 4 times as much. So they were like, I'll just get Joel to do it. And then they end up getting like so mad going back and forth. And they're like, do you even know what these songs are? Do you even understand Spanish? I'm like, I've never heard any of these songs ever in my life.
It's like, do I look like I speak Spanish? I have no idea.
Yeah. It ended up being a decent night, but there were probably a few people that were really pissed off because they were like, the DJ has no clue what he's doing. But I like knew what I was doing, but I also had no idea what I was doing at the same time. So
yeah, 100%. I've definitely run into that issue before too, especially like, if it's East Indians. I've had to do weddings like that where like play Bollywood music, and I'm like, I only know like a couple songs, and you'll play like the couple songs that you know, and they're like, no, that's like North Americanized version of that you know. That's not the real shit. And I'm like, what do you want from me? Like, I don't know. So
and that's where you have to be,
and then you're trying to. Yeah, I was just you're trying to search for the names, but the names are all Latin, and then they're like "La Caliente del Sol," or I don't know if what I just said there, but they'll say play that, and I'm like, how do you spell it? And they're like, oh.
There's the line over the O. It's like, I don't have that on my keyboard.
Yeah, it's like you're like on Google, like line with O, copy paste, like
yeah.
Yeah, you know what I mean?
Yeah, I've done that before. Where
yeah.
Oh man.
Yeah, it's silly.
It's It's you can definitely get out of your element. It's doable from a technical standpoint, especially if you have waveforms. You can just mix to waveforms, which is
you just need to know the songs. That's the problem.
Yeah, there's also one song that had like a dubstep intermission that I downloaded that I just it was literally reggaeton, and then it cut to that, and I was like, oh, I'm sorry, this is
Sean Paul bass boosted, super DJ Flip 9000.
Yeah. But I mean, looping back, I think for me, I've started to realize that I don't mind playing those gigs, and I still do. So I play one every year out. It's kind of like it's called Sunshine Coast, but it's kind of like when you're out in Salt Spring, you have to bring all your gear with you, and we take a boat to a camp in the middle of nowhere. It's all run off a generator, which we've blown before because I brought 4,000 watts of sub for like 190 people because we had a big butt. We got it. Well, and
2,000 just won't do.
It's crazy. Like, and it's like an old barn. And like it's got like you can see all the rafters and everything. And what I do is I throw the lights in the rafters.
Oh,
so
that's
the lights are illuminating the different kind of rafter sections, and then it kind of comes down, which it gives it such a cool vibe. And then we got smoke machines, and it's
a party.
I play like a regular set, and then what's nice is I can do like an after party set, sort of, where like people start to tone down. They do food at like 11 or 12, and then they let me play till 2. And there's so many Europeans that like I just get a couple Europeans and I like spread the word. I'm like, I'm playing a tech house set from 12 till 2. And then like I just
yeah.
go down on that. Or like we did drum and bass one year, and yeah, I had like this Dutch guy who was
man.
all about drum and bass, and I brought him up, and he was playing like Noisia. Like it was we're just like in the middle of nowhere, like way up Howe Sound near Squamish. We're just blasting Noisia. It's great.
Gold.
So I don't mind those gigs every once in a while.
No,
but
that's cool.
yeah.
It's really it's a really different thing, and I think that's like, I've seen this like so many times, like just people posting in different places or whatever. Like I remember one guy was complaining. He's like, I got this gig at a club, and like they keep wanting me to play top 40s stuff, and like I don't even see the point in DJing. Like that kind of DJing so stupid. Like you should do it for like the art and the love, and like, you know, you have to explain to these people like, listen, like there is many different kinds of DJing. There is, well, mainly two, you know.
Yeah.
There is like DJing because you were hired to provide music for a place, and then there is DJing to perform your own artistic thing, and they are not the same.
Yeah.
You can get practice in both places. You'll get more practice from playing because you're hired. Yeah. 100 mechanically 100% overlap. You'll get more experience playing for groups that you have to cater for. I think that's the most important part, because when you have to play for weddings or clubs, you learn the art of DJing first, and when you have that skill, it really makes your decisions a lot better when it comes to playing your own like performed set
and structuring.
There's such a yes, exactly. But there's a huge difference, you know, between a gig that you're providing top 40s and like reading a crowd for like 6 hours versus playing an hour-long showcase slot of your own music. And I think it's just really important to always remember that those things are not the same, because otherwise you're going to end up in situations like those kids were in, where they think they're playing like, you know, ultra main stage when they're really just playing, you know, dry grad
or that corporate gig when you're playing Avicii and they were like, play something with a beat.
Yeah, it's just nightmare. Oh no.
Yeah. It's okay. That happened earlier. Just FYI, everybody. Mike's waking up in 6.5 hours. It says flux.
It's never right. I don't know why it thinks it knows that.
Yeah, it knows exactly. It actually knows the future, and that's actually, it knows exactly when
it's
you're
never been
wrong. It's just trying to tell you to get to bed in time. So
yeah, it really is. I don't know if that's gonna happen though tonight. I really kind of want to go and finish working on that song.
Yeah, but yeah, I don't think there's really a moral to this conversation. It's more just like these are our experiences, and I think the thing we figured out the most is that like there really are two different kinds, and like people are paying you to provide a service to other people, not for you to be like, here's my art. Like it's like doing a mural and then drawing like some crazy abstract art that's what you care about, versus like, you know, a nice mural of some kids playing at a playground or something that they wanted it for the preschool. Yeah.
Yeah, you got to provide what the audience needs. You know what I mean? So I think the best thing to remember is that if your name isn't on the poster, then you should probably stick to top 40s.
Exactly, and requests.
Yeah, 100%. So
and if you want, you can sneak them in, but you just have to be careful and you have to find the right time.
Yeah, 100%. So what was your worst gig then?
I think it was probably the St. Patrick's one. I barely remember it. I'm only remembering it now because we're talking about it. But those kind of things, my brain's like, forget about that. That never happened. Don't even keep that in your mind. But I think that was probably the worst one. Yeah. From a technical standpoint, I never had any like severe technical issues other than like platters freezing up, and then just not being able to use the platter for the whole mix. But that's not the only rule. You just hit sync. Like it's not. You just do what you gotta do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh man, that was a nightmare for me. The first gig I ever played at a festival, that was when I won the Mysteryland competition, and they flew me out to New York to play Mysteryland. But I couldn't bring my S2 with me because it wouldn't have looked right taking that across the border, because they're gonna be like, "What are you doing?" You know, your trip's only a couple days long, and you're bringing that. You know, obviously you're going there to play a gig. You can't do that. So they're like, just bring your laptop, and we'll bring you a controller. And so they show up. And this is the thing, is I'm supposed to start at like 2 o'clock. I've got my computer set up at 1:30, and they still hadn't shown up until like 1:45. So I'm like, where's my mixer? I got to make sure this thing works. Yeah. Anyway, so we go on, and I like go to like start playing, and like, I get it running and stuff. And like the worst part is like, they said it was a Tractor S4, like thinking it's a Mark 1. So I went and borrowed my friend's Mark 1 to set up the drivers on it to make sure that was working. But they ended up showing up with a Mark 2. And I was like, oh my God. So I had the wrong drivers installed. And then I start playing. And then there was something wrong with their jog wheels. So I'm like trying to play and it thinks the platter's being touched. So I wasn't able to load another song into that next deck. And I've already started. The first deck's going and I go to load another song and it's not letting me. I'm like, what the fuck? So I had to like go into the settings and like turn off jog wheel push like during the start of my gig. And then like halfway through the gig, all of a sudden, yeah, it started doing like connection problems and stuff. So like it would do that thing where like the song's playing and it's not just the audio cutting out. It would be like the audio would like stop for a sec and then continue. So it was like, you know, every like 30 seconds, it was like do, and then keep going. And it would just like be like freezing. I'm like, this is a fucking nightmare. Like, you guys, why did you bring me a broken controller? But I ended up getting through that set. It wasn't so bad. It stopped glitching for a little while. So it was fine. Yeah. But as far as like technical issues go, it was definitely the one that I didn't tell last episode, which is that New Year's gig. So this last New Year's, I'm like going like last minute invited to this place, and I'm like, hey, can I bring my stuff just for fun? Like I'll play a little chill set. It'll be totally fine. Yeah. They're like, sure, if you can figure out how to plug it into Sonos speakers. And I'm like, okay, sure. So I'm literally like, I set up my gear. And I ended up having to download this program that like sends my audio through like a fake interface over Wi-Fi, and it sends it to these Wi-Fi speakers called Sonos speakers. And so I downloaded like 2 programs trying to figure this out, and I got it. And then I like plugged in my stuff, and I like pressed play on the song to see if it worked. And like sure enough, it starts playing out of the speakers, and I'm like, sweet, it's good to go. We're good. All right, everybody, like let's I'm gonna play a set. So I start playing. And then I go to play another song and I plug my headphones in and I'm like going to cue something up and I'm like, oh fuck, I have no headphone cue because I set it up so that it's like the output is the interface that goes to the speakers. So I realize now I'm like, oh my God, I have no headphone cue, and the playback is not even close to synchronized with what I'm seeing on the screen because it's delayed. Yeah. Before it comes out, because it's like playing on Tractor and then it's delayed by like 5 seconds, not 5 seconds, like 1.5 seconds before the audio comes out. Go ahead.
Okay, I was gonna say, I want to jump in. For people that don't know what Sonos is, it's like you have like 4 or 5 speakers around your house and they're all connected via Wi-Fi, and it streams the audio to them all separately. So it's very different than just plugging in with an aux cable, if you can imagine. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, so the latency is insane. Like if I scratch the jog wheel, it would be like like so delayed. So I'm like trying to mix with no headphone cue, and I go to press the next song, and I'm like, and I go, and it's like not even close. It's like 2.5 bars out of sync, and I'm like go to make the first transition, completely botch it, and I'm like, fuck, like this is so bad. I'm like, guys, like I don't know what to do. So like I literally like, I'm like, dude, like I need to figure some shit out, like come here and like start playing a mix. So we like grabbed someone's phone, connected it over, and started playing a mix. And people think I'm DJing, but here's like a mix is playing, right? Yeah. And I'm like, oh my God. So I go and I'm like looking forever like for a program on Mac that can do like internal audio routing and like aggregate device configuration. So I find this program called Loopback, and I'm like, perfect, download it. I'm like looking up the manual, like how to make an aggregate device. Okay, this click this, and I'm sure, okay, check this. Oh, does that work? And I'm like, half an hour goes by and I get it working. I'm like, okay, sweet, perfect, awesome, we're good. So I'm like, sweet, turn the music off, and I start DJing again. I start playing a song or whatever, and by this point, like, I'm already, like, panicking, like, sweating and shit like that, and, like, I'm like, I don't know what to play, and, like, I just throw on one song that was, like, definitely a little bit too intense. Like, it wasn't, like, heavy or anything, but it was definitely not the right vibe, and so I'm, like, playing that song, and I'm trying to figure out if it's working, and meanwhile, I'm, like, trying to learn how to, like, do it all in my headphones because I have to, like, mix, like, ahead of time because everything's coming out delayed. Yeah. And so it's a fucking nightmare. And like my sister's like coming over to me, she's like, play something more chill, and I'm like, I don't know what to do.
We have to wait 5 seconds for that change to come through.
Yeah, exactly. So like I'm looking for like better music, and I'm like, I get through a couple songs, and then all of a sudden out of nowhere, it's just like psh, like white noise, and I'm like, what the fuck? And I'm like, is this like, is it? Because it's not coming out of my headphones. It's because my headphones are coming out of this jack or whatever. But then that master output's coming from Loopback, and so I'm like, what is going on here?
No.
Yeah, and so I'm like listening, and I like go to Loopback, and it's like trial mode is now over. Like you will hear like severe noise degradation, and I'm like, yeah, no kidding. This is just blasting white noise. This is so loud, and everyone in the room is like, oh, like, what does that sound like? Oh, and it's like over top of some like music, like it's kind of in the background. And I'm like, oh my God, how long have I been sending this to you guys? Cause my headphones were on. And so like I take them off and like, I'm like, fuck, what the hell? So I get the guy to come back up. I'm like, dude, come fix it. And blah, blah. And he's like, okay. And he puts on a mix and I'm like, okay, I'm going to like see what I can do. So I start like, I fucking delete loopback. And then I'm like looking around and I find Soundflower. It's like, that's good. But the thing is like Soundflower doesn't even have like an install that exists anymore. So it's just like, you have to literally like go into your like terminal and like,
it's not very intuitive.
No, not even close. So I'm like looking and I finally find like a forum that's got a link to an old download that you can install. And so like like an hour's gone by and I install Soundflower and then I'm like figuring out that janky program and I finally get it up and running and I'm like, okay, I think this is going to work. And I like test it. I'm like, nope, still not hearing things. Figure it out. And eventually I get to the point like, and people are coming over. They're like, hey, can I request a song? And I'm like, I'm not even playing. Like, this is just a mix. And they're like, oh, I thought it was you the whole time. And I'm like, oh, that's awkward. Well, shit. And so anyway, finally I'm like, fuck yeah. Like I figured it out and I got this thing running and I'm like, nice. I can hear the thing. I can hear it through my headphones and blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, nice. I'm ready to start playing. Like, let's do it. Like, get the guy to come up and switch the audio off his phone. And then all of a sudden my sister's boyfriend walks up. He's like, all right, everyone's getting ready to go. We're like, we just called a cab, like time to go. I'm just like, okay.
That sounds about right. Yeah, man.
Close the laptop. Just cry a little. Like,
I remember getting the messages from you that night.
End.
I definitely got I think I got a play-by-play for parts of it. I also remember you were like, hey, can you send me some chill house? And I sent you a playlist earlier that night.
Yeah. He sent me a whole playlist and I didn't even get to play any of it.
It's funny. The only way I can think of, like, when you first set it up and you were hearing only the audio on the Sonos, it's like you were DJing and you were streaming to Twitch, but instead of listening to your own audio, you were watching your own Twitch stream. And you had to DJ
exactly
with that.
what it's like. And no headphone cue.
Yeah,
imagine trying to sync that up.
You could only look at the waveforms and do it entirely visually. That's the only option you have.
Yeah.
Which is not
really it did not work.
Fun.
Not even close. And then trying to mix it, like, you have no idea. You're like, I hope this sounds good. You're like,
yeah.
And I'm trying to play with a bunch of music I've never even heard before. Like,
yeah.
That was just me trying to have fun. And I felt so bad because I'm like, man, I just overstepped. I could have had so much more fun at this party if I wasn't stressed out doing technical work the entire time and like trying to look cool when really like no one even asked me to do this. And all I did is stress myself out and make it harder on everyone else. Like it could have been so much more. I was not the coolest guy in the room. Let's put it that way.
Yeah. Funny story that
but everyone was cool about it.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Totally forgot. I think I got one last story for you about, this is a gig that I did. There was through the Exchange Student Club. One of the guys there had messaged me and was like, hey, I hear you're the DJ. Can we meet? And I talked to you about a party that I want to throw. And I was like, sure. And I have the subs, like, so I have 2,000 watt subs, like 1,000 per channel. So it's like a decent PA system. It's not huge or anything, but like for a house party, it's banging. Like
that's good.
Fucking loud for a house party. And he's like, okay, so all of us exchange students they've rented this entire building. Like they are the only people that are in the building for like an entire block. And
nice.
And it's like right near, like, it's on Alma Street. So it's like in Kitsilano, and they're like, we want to do a party and we want it to be sick. Can you come early and set it up? We're not even really going to pay you, but we'll get you like a case of beer or whatever. And it's going to be a really sick party. I ended up doing it. And I'm not kidding. There was like 180 people in like 5 apartments. It was the craziest thing ever. Like the room I was in was like smaller than my bedroom. And I have my mixer and like 2 or 3 people standing on the table that I'm DJing on. I have to like fight them off so they're not stepping on the platters. The table is shaking. A couple times I just picked up the mixer and was playing like this. And then there's like a couch like jammed on the side, and just so they could like get more space. And there's like 2 people on top of the couch. The entire room, you could like lift up your feet, and it was so crushed in that you could easily stand, which sucked because really all the high frequencies were getting absorbed by the bodies. So it was like almost purely sub coming out of my speakers because there were so many people in the room. But that was a crazy gig. And then there were so many people there. Somebody threw beer cans out the window to the road, and they're in an apartment, so they were up ways up. And
cans
the cops,
or bottles?
Like just empty cans.
Okay.
At cars on a road, which is so stupid.
Oh my God. Yeah, that's so dangerous.
And the cops came and like raided.
Naturally.
Like they came, there's like 5 cars that came. And like I was like, I'm not part of this. I'm just here. I'm just hired to do my job. So I literally grabbed everything of value, left my speakers, like tucked it away and like tried to keep it like safe and just like booked it
man.
out of there, like left. And then like 4 hours later in the morning, I came back and was like, I'm gonna grab my stuff now that everything's cooled off. And they're like, yeah, the cops tried. The guy was like, they threatened to deport me. So if he does anything more like that, they were going to deport him. But it was fine because it was literally the end of the semester. He was leaving anyways.
Oh my God, that's crazy.
That's the craziest party I've ever done. And like, I've never seen that kind of cop presence. But it was because people were like throwing, like, that's so stupid. Like, it was actually a good party because the whole building was just the people that were okay with the party. Like, it was probably loud across the street, but not crazy because it was actually a commercial area. So it was like not too loud. But that was
insane.
Yeah, that was like the craziest party that I've ever done, and it could have ended very poorly. Yeah.
Yeah.
But
sweet, man.
Storily. Yep.
Storily sweet.
Yep.
Did I just say sweet?
No, you said storily. Sweet.
Oh, okay. Sorely sweet.
Storily sweet.
That's a sweet story.
So let's end it there for the stories because I'm pretty much all out of stories. I'm sure you probably got a couple more.
I think that's pretty much all of them, honestly.
Yeah. I was gonna say, what are you up to for next week?
Next week.
Well, next
week. Next week, I have no idea. Honestly, I'm just trying to finish up this big gigantic remix because that needs to get done soon, and I'm starting to get into a groove of it. I think I've figured out something that I'm gonna do for the drop, so that's gonna be good. And
I was listening to it today on the stream briefly.
Word.
Sounded good.
It's starting to shape up. It's coming slowly, but it'll be a good one. It always ends up being good. It's just taking its sweet ass time.
Yeah.
Yep. And then sound design challenges.
Yeah, sound design challenges.
Yeah, I'll be streaming. Yeah, I'll be streaming. Yeah, definitely gonna try and stream as much. But I need to start getting back into like a schedule of waking up earlier again because I've pushed myself back a bunch. And like, it's just been screwing me over. And I'm generally just like more happy when I get up. So I need to start doing that again.
Yeah,
but,
I've cut coffee out, if you can believe it. I haven't had coffee in
really
3.5 days. Yeah.
Wow. Why?
Headaches are just starting to cease.
Oh yeah.
Just trying to get more sane. Sometimes when I have too much coffee, like it's just too much, you know. It's harder to sleep when you have coffee. It's like proven that your sleep quality is much worse. So trying to better sleep quality, trying to get more of in a groove. So exercising, eating good, and just because like we're like a month and a half into this quarantine, I'm starting to go insane for sure. So I'll try to do all things I can to keep my head level.
Yeah, no kidding. Well, I hope that goes well.
I probably will have coffee again soon, but for now.
Yeah, coffee's always part of it, but never a bad idea to take a little break.
Yeah, I definitely depend on it pretty heavily. I was like, okay, I need to take Tylenol because I have such a bad headache from not having coffee.
Oh God.
Yeah, it's gone now though.
Good.
Yeah.
Sweet. The Tylenol or the coffee or the headache?
All.
Yes.
I think I said that before. Remember, I was like, all. That's not the first time I've said that exact thing.
Yes. I don't even know.
I remember you said, you were like, yeah, I think it was at food. I think you were like, can I have, do you want tomatoes? Do you want sour cream? And I'm like, all.
all. Yeah. Like, what is it? I can't remember, the Donair dude or something.
Oh, I think that's what it was. It might have been Donair.
Yeah.
I think you said it to them when you were there. They're like, which toppings do you want? You're just like, all.
All.
You want to go Donair dude, man? Donair man, dude. Oh, man, I butchered it.
It's not Donair dude, man. It's Donair man, dude.
Dude. Oh, God.
Oh, God.
We don't even need to go into that backstory. That's one for next time. Yep. Well, thanks for tuning in. I hope you enjoyed the episode.
DJ stories, always fun.
Yep. I hope that there was something you learned because we made many mistakes, and hopefully maybe you can not make one of those mistakes too. Yes. And I hope that DJing is still relevant someday in the future, and we will get to make more stories. Yeah, 100%. We should play back-to-back. Have we ever played a back-to-back? I don't think we ever have. We should. Although our musical taste, our DJ tastes are very different now. Well, I could adjust. We'll make, I'll adjust too. We'll just adjust. Yeah. Adjust. Adjust. We'll just adjust. On that note, let's adjust.